Hello everyone, welcome back to the NPC Dungeon. Last week I talked all about planning for a session. This week's it's notes. As you might guess, note-taking is super important to planning. D&D is a game that meanders and can change on a dime, so we as DMs need to be ready to react and adapt our plan to whatever may occur. And this might mean incorporating something that happened last session into your planning. And spoiler, it almost always does. So let's get into the episode and let's learn something. Before we begin, I want to give out a quick disclaimer. Once again, this is not a video about taking notes as a player, but I just might do my next video on that next week. This is a video all about jotting down things that happen during a session so that you can plan around that. And jumping off that, another quick disclaimer. I might be a great note taker as a player, at least I think I am, but as a DM, I hate taking notes. To me, it just seems like with all the responsibilities a DM already has, note taking is just one more thing on top of that. But it doesn't have to be so bad. So what do I do to mitigate some of the pain that note taking induces? Well, first, I have a specific place in my campaign notes, by this I mean my notes that I planned for that session, that I have set aside for note taking during the session. I'll either have a blank note on my phone or a blank sheet of paper labeled session notes or something, and I'll write everything new and unexpected that happens on that. And when something does happen, I'll try not to be too long-winded with the note. I go out of my way to write in as few words as possible so that I'm not spending all my time taking notes. It might be as simple as, John stole a potion of flight from a vendor. This helps me be as concise as possible so that when I review for the next session and start planning for what might happen during it, I can very easily find my session notes and know exactly what happened without having to do much reading. But what do I write down? Well, this is really the hard part. My advice to you is that it's better to err on the side of caution. It's better to have too many notes and too detailed notes than too few or too little detailed notes. I can't tell you how many times I forgot something that happened in a previous session that should have come back up because I should have taken a note that I didn't. This may sound like a cop-out answer, but basically anything that you think is going to come up again in the future is something you should write down as a note. Has one of your players been infected with some kind of lycanthropy? You may want to write it down. Did John steal another potion from the vendor again? You may want to take a note so that the angry potion vendor can hire a detective or rant about thefts next time the party stops by. But other times it's completely obvious. For example, in my current campaign that I'm running, it takes place entirely underground. My players just found a route to the surface that I didn't expect them to come across yet. I had to do some major planning for that one. And for one last little note about note taking, don't stress yourself out about it too much. I know it might sound like I'm trying to say it's the most important thing ever or whatever, and it's pretty important, but like I said earlier, you have enough to worry about as a DM. And besides, like I also said, as the DM, I'm not the best note taker who ever lived either. If you do end up forgetting something as a DM in between sessions, don't beat yourself up about it. It may be jarring when it comes back up when a player does a thing they said they're going to do or goes to pick up a commission that a vendor made for them, but it doesn't have to be. Think of it as good improv practice. And if for whatever reason you can't, like maybe your player spent good money on a custom weapon from a blacksmith and you want to do it justice, admit that you forgot and try to move on. And then either handle it either in between sessions or during the next one. As I always like to say, it's never a good idea to try to deceive your players or put a wall in front of them by saying the shop is closed down or something because you forgot. In these cases, I really do think that honesty is the best policy. In D&D, we want to create a friendly and open environment where we can admit our mistakes. A good player will understand. And again, on the opposite side, I'm not saying just not to take notes. Definitely do your best to follow what I said this episode and you should be fine. And if you have better tips or something that I forgot, let me know in the comments. I always like seeing all the interesting feedback you all have for me. But that's it for this week's DM Advice episode. I hope you enjoyed it and I hope you learned something from it. Feel free to check out this week's story. It follows the same group I've been following as they near the end of their tale. And come back next week where I'll finally wrap up their story and where I'll talk about taking notes as a player instead. Thanks for watching as always, and until next time, let's learn something.